films that operate like reality and dreams operating on the same plane. I love those kinds of films.
It is a joy and an honor to speak with you, Clement. Thank you so much for your time. I'm speaking with Clement Virgo, the filmmaker behind Steal Away, which is just incredible. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that.
Wow. As I said, this film is so incredibly powerful and just beautifully told. But where did it come from?
It's a real story, you know. Steal Away is a real story about a young black woman who was uh, gifted to a young white woman, and I believe it was during the 1860s in Kentucky, and was really kind of fascinated by the story, but did not want to tell a story of the past. You know, just trying to find a way to tell a story that was timeless, a story that felt um, contemporary, but also has a sense of, is this the future? Is this the past? You know, just trying to really in view the genre, and you know, I chose the fairy tale genre, infused it with a sense that that there's a timeless quality to the story.
Well, that's exactly. I wanted to ask you about that because it opens like a fairy tale, but it certainly doesn't behave like one throughout the film. And you said it gives it this timeless quality, which is absolutely true. But where in your mind are the lines between that? Like you said, this is a real story, but you're telling it through this uh, more traditional fairy tale lens.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're like real. I mean, it's real in cinema was always I always find it kind of interesting. You know, like it's like you know, like what is real? You know, I mean, it's is Star Wars real? Is you know, in 2001 A Space Odyssey real? You know, and so you know, and for me, stories are metaphors and allegories. They're trying to make sense of, they're trying to, you know, part of make you try to make sense of yourself as an artist, as a filmmaker, but also to try to, you know, in the case of this film, try to make sense of history. You know, to try to make sense of the past, and to talk about the past, because I think there's a sense now that the past is dead and it should not be discussed. You know that was behind us, but we also live in a time now where that we see echoes of the past in the present day, in our present contemporary world, in the contemporary politics, and you know, in our contemporary culture, and so. Um, you know, I wanted to make a film that spoke to all of that, you know, without being didactic, you know, try to smuggle in these ideas, try to be entertaining, try to challenge in some ways, you know. You know, I'm not sure if we as audience completely want to be challenged these days or just want to be affirmed. I'm not sure, but I wanted to kind of push that a little bit, have the audience lean in a little bit, trying to untangle, um, you know, the film because as I was making it, I was trying to untangle it myself. You know, I was trying to come up, created all these ideas, these images, these themes, um, and some of the, you know, some of my films that I love do that for me. You know, like certain filmmakers do that. People like Michael Haneke or you know, David Lynch or you know, people like, you know, certain filmmakers are where you have to kind of sit with the film and kind of um, untangle how I feel about it. You know.
Well, and that's absolutely the case here because one of the things about this it how do I say this well? It doesn't talk down to anybody in the sense that it doesn't lay everything out. You know, when you step into the world, there's a sense it's almost a feel at first where you just feel what's going on as opposed to 40 years ago this happened. You know, we step into it and the
Yeah.
film does that so well. Sorry.
No, no, it's interesting you say that. It's like it's you know, yeah, it's like I do want to, in a way, I mean, films for me are about emotion and trying to connect and try to affect the audience in some ways. And you know, it could be puzzling. If some audience, some perhaps want to be like located, like where am I? What's going on? What's it? But for me, I love. I don't want to. That's why I find it challenging sometimes, where you're kind of, especially now, when I watch some streaming films, you just feel like you your hands are being held and you kind of being pulled through the plot, you
Yeah,
know, and there's no space for you, there's no mystery, and there's no sense of discovery. There's no puzzle box to work out. It's kind of there to be presented, you know. Maybe that's the future of cinema.
yeah.
Maybe that's the future of art. Maybe it's the sense that if I'm going to engage in any kind of work, I don't really call it content, but if I'm going to engage in the work, that the work somehow um, has to affirm my values, affirm my viewpoint of the world. And I love works that don't do that. Works that kind of, is it completely successful? I don't know. Well, I'll find out in a few years. I'm still in the middle of trying to puzzle out, trying to kind of, um, work out my experience with the film. And it was a bit of an experiment, because you you used the word real earlier, but it's like I've made films that felt naturalistic,
Mm.
and I wanted to make a film. I wanted to make a film that I don't know if you've ever seen Night of the Hunter by Charles Lawton,
No.
but when I watched that film, it's like it's just such a unusual, surreal, um, mysterious world. If you have a chance to see Night of the Hunter, um, with Robert Mitchum as a star, and these two young kids who like steal away and go down this river, and there's a kind of magical quality to it. Just films like that, or films like say Persona. I was really just where it's like, what is this? What are these images that I'm seeing? How do are these two women the same? Are they not the same? Is this a dream? And it's films that operate like reality and dreams operating on the same plane. I love those kinds of films.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things about this film is that I love. But I wouldn't just before we run out of time,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one thing about this particular because I mean, the journeys of Cecile and Fanny are held up in juxtaposition with each other, and I'd love to talk to you about the tension between oppression and suppression because there's seems to be two very different and distinct journeys happening at the same time.
Oh, that's a very, very um, amazing question. And it just, if you don't mind, suppression. You think that Fanny is suppressed and Cecile's oppressed in terms
That's
of
where I was landing, but there is a unique blend between the two. Both of
too.
them
Yeah,
are experiencing it in different ways.
yeah. And it's and they are, and they're both in a way in a kind of psychological bondage, and have and the journey of their story between Cecile and Fanny is one hopefully of earned allyship, and to me that's optimistic because it speaks to the future of um of of that allyship to help shape you know the the Afrofuturist world that Cecile sails off to in the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love watching their journey and journeys, I should say. And like I said, this is the sort of film that just sits with you after it's the credits roll. I love we talk about unpacking, and this is one of those ones that you want to do that with.
Thank you.
Clement, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Steal Away is just a stunning piece.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you too. Have a great day.